Namaskar. Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree. Tuesdays or alternate Tuesdays, 8 p.m. is usually Dr. Swamy time. And I have the pleasure and honor of welcoming a former Law, Commerce and Justice Minister and current Rajya Sabha member, Dr. Subramanian Swamy. Dr. Swamy, Namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram.
Dr. Swamy, today you're going to be wearing the hat of an economist. And I'm telling my viewers and everyone that this was the economics class that you skipped while you were at college.
No, I never skipped any.
No, not you. I'm talking about the viewers, sir. The viewers,
yeah,
because we don't seem to
yeah.
worry about this. Nobody seems to be worried about the impact of freebies over a long term. And how people get used to it. And this is not just India, Dr. Swamy, it is a problem with United States also. We are burdening our future generation with a lot of debt and being fiscally indisciplined. And I don't have to tell you, Dr. Swamy, how much money gets splashed around at election time, freebies such as cookers and television sets and cycles and what have you, and also plain cash. But these all have a long-term effect. Actually, I'm also concerned about what happens when we are giving dole because of a pandemic, for instance. Because I'll give you a real example in US, Dr. Swamy. Much of the workforce has not returned back after the lockdown because they are getting their paycheck. It's called PPP, Paycheck Protection Program, and that was giving them the same kind of salaries, and they were not willing to go back to work. And this is a real problem today, Dr. Swamy. So my overall here, the request from you, sir, is first off, you can explain some of these differences. There are promises, like for instance, DMK promised 1,000 rupees a month, but then nothing has been given. And now Mamta Didi wants to give 5,000 rupees per woman per month in Goa. And the economic impact of that kind of stuff is, mind-boggling. Yet people make these promises. So please take it away, sir. And we're looking forward to a really good lecture from you on what happens when we give freebies.
Well, first, as a side comment, Mamata Banerjee didn't start this business. It was started by the DMK, and they worked into a fine art. The Congress also used to do quite a lot of it. And then, of course, it became standard practice. Let me say that first, this freebie is an American word. And we would rather, the sophisticated word for it is called subsidies. You're subsidizing somebody. But subsidizing has the meaning that you are giving part of the thing. But in freebies, you give the whole thing. And so there, it's in that category. Now, frankly speaking, on the freebie issue, there's no black and white answer. Sorry to use black and white. I don't mean black money and white money, but I mean in the sense that it's not there's no sharp contrast between giving and not giving. So what I can say is, as an economist to begin with, that it is a freebie is good if you have a demand weakness in the economy. For instance, 1930, United States had this big depression, and people ran out of money because there was no employment. So they used to stand in a queue in the street, lining up for a cup of soup. And you I'm sure you must have seen pictures of it. I know that you weren't an adult at that time, so you wouldn't in 1930. But the fact is that this saved the American society from becoming violent, because people found shops all empty, everything empty. And at that time, giving this minimum support of soup and about four slices of bread made a big difference to a lot of people. So, I mean, all freebie is not bad and all freebie is not good. The question is when it is bad. I think I'll place less emphasis on what when it is good, but I will place much more emphasis when it's bad. Now, supposing you don't have in your country a minimum wage law like in the United States, where you do have a minimum wage law, then what happens? You, by freebies, you are actually nourishing him so that he can continue to work. He has to have a certain minimum standard to be an effective worker. If he's half starving or he's only having a meal once in 2 days, he's not going to be a very good worker. So therefore, I think one of the ways of getting rid of freebies, except in emergencies, we are back to the American situation, is to have an assured minimum wage, which you effectively enforce like in the United States. You in India, we have many places where minimum wage laws, but nobody implements it, and furthermore, people get around it by companies showing that they are paying above the minimum wage, but actually giving the person his wages in cash minus the thing that takes them to the minimum wage. So I mean, it's all kinds of rackets go on. But the fact of the matter is that if a subsidy, a cash grant, a freebie as you call it, mostly freebie we use for physical things like pressure cookers, giving pressure cookers, or even a refrigerator or a cycle, motorcycle, scooter. Those generally we call as freebies at least in economics. So the issue therefore is, number one, if there is a demand shortage in the country, then freebie is good for the country. But again, it will be short term. It can't be a long term process. You can't take it, but if there is no demand shortage, to win over somebody for some reason, like in an election, that is bad, because that will ruin that freebie through inflation. Because if the demand is is adequate, and then you give some freebie, then what happens is in form of cash. Then what happens is that the demand goes up, and therefore it will be there'll be an inflation, because the demand is already at the level of the supply, and now it goes beyond the level of supply available. So that if demand is more than supply, that prices would rise. So now the question is this is one. Secondly, supposing I say education is free for you if you are a certain level, that freebie is not at all bad. If I say I'll give you free medical attention, maybe not maybe not for medicines or so on, because that may be difficult to administer. But say that if you come to our clinic, it's a government designated clinics, you'll get a free test, and you'll be told in what shape you are, what you lack, and so on. So that's good for the society. It's a freebie, but it's good for your society. I would say even if you gave a freebie, not in the time of the election, because if you give any freebie in the election, you are actually bribing the voter. But when in a non-election time, if supposing I gave somebody a television set, I would be in a position to them to have some entertainment, plus they might also learn a lot by watching television and events, know more about the country and so on. So we begin with that issue. Now, during the elections, it needs to be banned in a severe way, because it is parties cannot spend, because we have election law which says you can't spend more than so much. Americans have even stricter thing. You can't get donations except below a certain level. So what happens is that all these things get done either by extortion. That is, you tell a pressure cooker company, give me 5,000 pressure cookers for my constituency, and after the elections, if I win, I will look after you. Or I'll make it easier for you to make 10,000 in place of the 5,000. So you're again here in what is called as a razor bar walk, in the sense, if you go this way you fall, and if you go that way you'll fall, but if you walk straight, you will get across. So during the elections, it subverts the election. It makes people vote not for whom they think is best for you, but the one who is giving you the maximum freebies. You can take freebies from one candidate and vote for another candidate, but the party workers will know that very soon, and then of course it will lead to violence. They will come and say that you took this thing, and give them a beating and so on and so forth, and especially if in that constituency you may have lost, but overall you may have won and come to power. So it leads to crime, it leads to terror, and so on. So I would say that the freebie issue is the only place I can think of where it is bad and damaging for society is an election, because essentially it is a bribery. It is not to enhance your position. It's not to improve your health. It's not got anything to do with your position in society or the society itself being improved. Supposing I went and said, I will remove the toll you charge when you go on the highway if you vote for me. Now, I wouldn't call that a harmful freebie, because after all, that will mean cars can go faster, the delays will be lower, and so on. So in a macro sense, the society is benefited. Now, consumption is immediate, and production there's a gestation lag. So when the society consumes too much, then and that too free, you don't have the money for your long gestation, or for those projects which will take time to complete. You don't have that, you see. And so again the question is, the economy is adversely affected if you engage in freebies, because you are really shifting resources to consumption, when in fact if it's a developing society, you need it much more for investment and building infrastructure. Now, there's another freebie which you normally don't call freebie, and that is the write-off of NPA. That's the biggest scandal in India today. I have tried hard to bring it to the notice of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said, no, you first go and get this matter clarified before the Reserve Bank. And the Reserve Bank is complicit in that. And how many crores 2 or 3 industrialists in our country have run away with? Now, is that not freebie? That's also freebie. Why I should catch somebody to saying that you got a freebie, you got a sewing machine during the elections and so on. Yes, of course, you voted because of you voted because he gave you a machine. You didn't look at whether he's a qualified person or not, or that he will collect 10 times or 5 times what he has given to you. So before I leave for an interaction with you, let me make these 2 points. NPA is the real freebie in my country, in our country. And subsidies, write-offs, all these things that they give to the industrial society, the industrialists in our society, that freebie, in my opinion, is far more important than, say, what you mentioned. See, you understand the United States, if they're doing it on a long-term basis, it's bad for the country. But they did put into their accounts the monthly salary they were getting straight from the Treasury Department. I think that was one of the most magnificent steps any civilized society has taken. And but as you correctly said, this is not a long-term solution. So as soon as the corona goes, they must give it up, or created such a situation that people don't want to go back to it. In fact, nowadays I hear that in the United States there's a complaint that people are just walking off the places they work, and they think that they can survive on the freebies that are being provided by the state. Now that's a dangerous development when you don't want to work, and you don't want to work harder because you have to make up for all the lost thing. So I would just recant and say, let's look at freebies not as something you give the ordinary people. They are already, many of them are on the poverty line or below the poverty line. The daily wage worker who walks to work, who leaves his village and comes to and lives in a slum. If you give him a freebie, for instance, when these all these daily wage workers walked back home, they actually were, when they reached their villages, they were starved people. What the government should have done is set up freebie stations on the way, and not give food stuff and all that. Give them money, because all along the road they were walking, there are restaurants, they can go and eat in the restaurants. So you look at that is a freebie, but it's not a bad one. But the danger of what happens to society when you do it on a long-term basis is you can learn from the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union collapsed, there was a brief period of celebration that we have got democracy at last. But very soon, during the Yeltsin period, when Gorbachev had gone and Yeltsin had come, during the Yeltsin, people began to ache for that certainty that was there in the communist rule of freebies. Communist rule was the people just got freebies. They got a place to stay. They got a free medical care in the place of their work, and so on. So the Russian population soon began to prefer dictatorship to democracy, because democracy, it was alien to them, and it was very painful for them. And in fact, there was a time when Russian society had gone to the point where women, respectable women, are going and being call girls on the road so that they could get money to buy bread. That kind of situation had come, and Putin came and rectified all that, but at a heavy cost. You had to give up your freedom. You had to give up your right to speak freely, and the normal facilities you get. So no society should be brought up on a certainty about freebies. It should be connected with some emergency, and say that this is, please don't depend on it. Don't psychologically become dependent on it. It is something that we are doing it because we don't want the society to collapse in this hour of crisis. And these dictatorships, None of them have managed to recover. Take Libya, take Egypt, take Syria. None of them have been able to recover. Because once you have made your citizens dependent on the state doing everything, then that takes a long time for it to recover. The only society which has come up even after all that was our Hindu society, the country called Bharat, where we were living in that kind of a situation. Of course, it was not an enjoyable situation, but still, the British gave you houses for employees and so on. But ultimately, people all decided no, they must go. Emergency. People, the propagation was you are now got officers coming to you on time. You can get your rations without difficulty. All these things, but in the end, the people chose democracy over this kind of certainty. So the one of the biggest dangers of is this. Today, I would say, if suddenly democracy comes to any country, say China, they will not be comfortable. The people will not be comfortable. They may celebrate for a brief while their freedoms, but in the end, they will say that the old one, where you knew which college you had to go, what subject you had to study, you were told that by the state. You get used to that, and it's like being a lion in a circus, or the lion in a circus will perform any gymnastics for you without challenging you, and all you have to do is crack a whip and they will go and climb on a table. So this capture of the mind that comes out of the certainty of when the life becomes a certain thing and you are dependent on it, you get used to it. That's what it is. So I would draw lessons from the USSR and other dictatorships which have collapsed and have not been able to reassemble. Of course, in the case of the USSR, it became Russia, and today Russia is back to what it was, except that they don't have a communist ideology, but they have a dictatorship. So dictatorship is the outcome of continuous state provision of freebies. And in India too, elections have been spoiled because of freebies. Because of freebies, the money has to come from black money, and that has to come by the government becoming a terror with businessmen. And the businessmen have to give money during elections, not because they like the party, but because they are afraid that they may come to power and give you a hard time. So the society doesn't flower into a democratic society. And freebies is actually a threat in the long run to the democracy of our society. And of course, once the freebies gets going, there's nothing to stop adulteration. There's nothing to stop what I would call as patent. You're a man with 37 patents. if there was a free for all, you would not feel like doing anything to earn another patent. So the human society has to be based on competition. It has to be based on an ambition, and it has to be based on the freedom to exercise your will. And freebie is actually a short-term emergency situation only, and not a rule of governing society.
Dr. Swamy, thank you so much. And I had two questions for you, one of which you've already answered, which is that Russia has sort of gone back to the USSR type of economic model or governance. I had another question for you, sir, and this has to do with Japan. Now, in Japan, after the Second World War, they were absolutely decimated, and they had to pick themselves up. And I don't know who suggested this to them, but they formed this thing called the MITI, Ministry of Industry, Technology. Yeah,
MITI,
industry.
yeah.
Yeah. So
MITI,
what
yeah.
MITI, right? MITI. So what they did was right through the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they shepherded the country in a certain way where companies grew without stomping on each other's feet. Could you kind of explain to our viewers how it did that, and also if that kind of a model is something that India could look at to try and see there are problems in many ways, and having a certain amount of time where you can blossom into you find your feet and then let competition in. Would that be something that India can look at? Perhaps your thoughts, sir.
No, Japan did it. See, as far as MITI is concerned, they created I've studied that very much because Japan also had a crash in
Yes.
1997. Okay,
Right.
and MITI was the cause of it because people had begun to feel that this growth rate of 10 to 12% per year, which Japan achieved between 1965 to 1975, a little more than 1995. So 20 years Japan grew at. There was a time when Japan came and bought Rockefeller Center. You know that. They bought so many skyscrapers in various parts of, and now you don't hear that Japan because they never recovered from that 1990s crash, East Asia crash. So what MITI did was not what the Russians are doing, or the Soviets did, or the Chinese have done. The Chinese model is also partly this thing that you have talked about, freebies, but they also extracted inhuman commitments from the workers. They worked 14 hours, 15 hours, and so on. But on the other hand, they got a free house to stay. Their children got free education, but it was an indoctrination of an education. Now, what India needs to do is tell people that the interest rates that are running between 12% and 15% per annum will not be more than, to begin with, 9, and you cut it down ultimately to 4. United States, the interest rates, if you know very well, if I go to a bank and take a loan, that's right, at worst 2%, if it's a very large amount. Right. So that is the way to do it. You use the market forces, and you don't force it, you don't give them a command, but you say that we control the interest rates, and we will ensure to you that the interest rates will not be more than 2%. Government of India today, if they lowered the taxes on petrol, it'll make a huge difference. People will go long distances and stay. They will not crowd in cities. And people will be able to even provide their own transportation. They won't have to depend on the railways. They won't have to depend on the buses. So why I have been constantly saying abolish income tax? Because there is an indirect way of giving freebies which they actually are own, you see. It was snatched away from them by taxes. And I'm telling them, you don't have to bother about any paper writing, you don't have to do anything else, as long as you, this income you have, we will urge you in the national interest to save as much as you can. And Indians do save anyway, very large amount. You know that 80% of our total domestic savings is from the households. There is no other country in the world. Even China has only 15%, you see. And so I think what we need to do is that we have to build the freebie concept in a sophisticated way into the system, so that it doesn't look as if the state is giving you something. The concept of a state as mother, father, any mabap sarkar, as in the old days we used to call it, that concept should never come. Otherwise, because if it does come, democracy would be affected. So the answer to your question is, MeitY was essentially to tell business people where to invest, and said that, listen, you go to this bank and they will give you a loan, but you have to pay the interest on it, and you have to, it's a commercial thing. There's no freebie here. But what to produce, where to produce, and how to sell, all this was done by MeitY. And MeitY was an advisory body and not a body which dictated anything to anybody.
So we have kind of come around a little bit in the sense that we looked at the freebies, pros and cons, and then the long-term effects. And now we're looking at how to take India forward. One of the things, Dr. Swamy, that has happened is that the real estate value in India has completely gone berserk.
Why?
Now, so I'll give you an instance of what Canada has tried to do about it, and then you can tell me, Dr. Swamy, if it will work for India also. In Canada, especially in Vancouver, a lot of Chinese were coming and buying up multiplexes, 4 flats in a multi-storied building, and so on and so forth. And this was driving the price of the entire housing through the roof. And what Vancouver did was, they said, if you are a foreigner buying into our buying real estate in our city, then you have to pay an extra 15% overhead. But that did not stop. People are still buying property in Vancouver. Then they said that if you are buying a property, but you're not occupying it, meaning leaving it locked, it still costs the city, because we still have to keep the gas running. Because if there are 4 tenants in a 1,000 house complex, we still have to run everything else. So they put another surcharge on that. But I think it only slowed it down. At least there is some slowdown. If you look at India, Dr. Swamy, there are many mega houses, like, mega flats, 100 floors or 50 floors, especially in cities like Bengaluru, Bombay, Delhi, and Hyderabad, and so on, which are essentially built from the black money of people. And they're willing to just, they've just let it, unoccupied.
No, you see, you got the answer yourself. How do you get rid of black money? All those things for which black money is created, you have the instruments for which are responsible. I say abolish income tax. You will see the first thing that will be affected is the housing sector. Prices will come crashing down. So you may have to calibrate the, you may not have to, you can, I think income tax should be abolished in one blow, but sales tax, excise tax, house tax, land tax, all these have to be over a period calibrated to come down, and the investment in real estate will show a lower and lower rate of return. Today, real estate gives you the highest rate of return, and there's no accountability, because you don't have that kind of staff that can go and monitor every plot of land, what its price is, who you sold it to, and so on. All the workers of the Mazdoors who work on the building the thing, they all get cash. You can't go and catch them and say, anyway, they're below the tax limit. But you can't say, no, still you have to give an account of it. So I would say that if Japanese have scored, it's to see that such things don't happen. They They are being very scientific in the application of subsidies and taxes, and they have hardly given any subsidies, but on the other hand, they have been very liberal in cutting taxes. So I think India can solve this problem of real estate. And people, you see, today I'll tell you another aspect. Supposing I have black money, I build a house, but that's not enough. I put marbles imported from Italy. I put air conditioner in every room, including bathroom. Now, what happens? The rate of return of producing air conditioner goes up compared to others. And so investment, which was somewhere else, comes and says, why, we should be producing air conditioners. Indian economy doing a matrix analysis shows that directly and indirectly 70% of our investment goes for producing luxury goods, only because of this black money issue. Abolish registration fees. It just requires a witness and you sign, and that's it. Not that stamp paper and all that. I don't know whether you remember the name Telgi.
Yes, yes, stamp paper scam.
He had hired several apartments in RK Puram, and it was packed with 500 rupee notes,
Stamp
100
paper.
rupee notes, right from floor to the thing, in house after house, because he was, he was getting cash and then he started duplicating the stamp paper, forging it. So Indians have got a lot of brains. Give them incentives. Don't give them freebies. Freebies will only spoil them. Incentives. Just create incentives.
Thank you very much, Dr. Swamy. And I think we have a few questions for you, if you could allow it. We have tried to select some good questions.
Yeah.
Let's have the questions, please. Mr. Lee wants to know, Dr. Swamy, is free education a freebie? Because even USA, the land of free markets, gives all US citizens federal student aid and loans.
Yeah. I would say you can make schools, especially private schools, to defer tuition. You when you are studying, you don't pay anything. But once you finish your studies, you go and you start earning, then you start paying paying the fees that you had to pay, perhaps with a low rate of interest of 2-3%. That can be done. You just can't say that I will have a free education, because somebody has to pay for it. So it comes again the same way. You'll have to tax people and then bring it in and then give it to schools which gave you free educations. So rather than that, just say that everybody is entitled to an education, the right to education, and the fees for it, if they can't pay all of it, they pay some of it. If they can't pay none of it, they need not pay. But you will assign a bond that after you graduate and start earning, you will give it. Now, for that, you also must build many more universities, many more colleges. So you create an incentive there that whoever invests in building a university will be given all kinds of tax exemptions. So the economics, you see, if you use the instruments, you can do it without having a big bureaucracy or a CBI or enforcement directorate to enforce it. So that's the way to do it. Everything should be incentives are the best way to run a democracy, and Indians will respond to incentives, especially for something like education. And education is vital. Economists have calculated that more capital and more labor only gives you 40% of the growth rate. 60% comes from your innovations. Whether from bullock cart you went to locomotive engines, from locomotive engines you went to jet planes, and from jet planes you went to internet. These are all innovations. They are the ones that have created the productivity in your society. More efficient way. Can you believe today you don't have to wait for 7 days before a letter comes to you from the United States? You can. I don't think you even need 7 seconds. You see, this is the thing. This is the thing that we have to realize, that innovation is crucial, and for innovations you need education. And we've got 70% of our population under the age of 35. 70%. You see, average age of an Indian is only 26. Average age of Chinese is 35. Average, because of that one child per family thing that they imposed. Average age of an American is 37. Of Europe is 46, and Japan is 50. Japan suffered heavy family planning because the Americans after World War II imposed it in the name of family planning. But it was really to control the Japanese population. But we have got this huge human resource. But educate them, motivate them to be entrepreneurs. Indians are. So I think The Economist has an article, I'm told, the latest issue, that why Brahmins from India run factories in Britain, but don't do it within India. So it's the environment that makes the difference.
Thank you, Dr. Swamy. Next question is again from Mr. Lee. There is a concept of zero marginal cost economy by Jeremy Rifkin due to nearly zero cost energy. Can subsidizing energy as a freebie stimulate economic growth?
All energy is exhaustible, and we have to monitor that in such a way that we don't run out of it before we get a substitute. And to get a substitute, you need to have heavy research and development expenditure. So I think I don't know the exact concept of zero marginal cost, because I haven't read. I know Rifkin, but I have not read this book. And my view is that things that which are used as inputs in a production system should not be subsidized. What education can be subsidized to the maximum, because it's a producer. It's not an input.
Next question, please. We're going to try and limit to not more than 2 questions. And then, we can just call it, because you're getting phone calls and I don't want to take up too much of your time, Dr. Swamy.
Yeah.
Shadow Showdown wants to know, Dr. Swamy, what is the best economic model for India?
The best economic model I've presented in my book, Reset, where I say it should be, in broad terms, I'll say incentive-driven economy. You want particular people to go in this direction, give them incentives. I don't want taxes. Taxes down to the minimum. I don't want licenses. I don't want anything where the state is responsible for policing you. But if you follow a policy, supposing today, for some reason, you become prime minister and you ask me to be your finance minister, don't look so serious. I'm not. What would I do? I'll begin by saying, announce that effective from January 1 year so and so, all income tax abolished, and whatever is still pending in income tax litigation, all those files will be burnt, and a lock will be put on the income tax department. So this would be one. Lower the interest rate first to 9%, then down to 5, 4, 3. Keep it at 3%. Then fixed deposits, 5 years, raise it to 10% interest. And people say, where will you get all the money from? I'll print the notes. Printing notes is bad only if there is no excess capacity for production. Then that becomes inflation. But in India, there's tremendous excess capacity. You go and see industry after industry, nothing is over 60% utilized. Then to spread the country, people across the country, lower the fuel prices to its cost. What is the cost of petrol today? From getting it from the refinery and then refining it, then putting it in trucks and sending it to the petrol bunks, giving the petrol bunk man a commission, all that added up today is only 45 rupees per liter. And you're paying 110 rupees per liter today. All taxes. In fact, when Chidambaram was there, even taxes for education he included in the petrol bill, and of course never spent on education. The name was taxes for education. So make people feel free, so to speak. That was the best economic policy. And then, of course, there are so many things for us to do. We have got a huge ocean around us. Desalinate seawater, you will not have any problem. There will be no fight for Kaveri. Both sides they are ocean. Desalinate and put them and send them by pipeline. It's not that we are not doing it today. We are doing it in Kalpakam, in the nuclear plant in Tamil Nadu. The entire scientific population gets its tap water not from the municipality but from their own nuclear reactor. See.
So on top of that, Dr. Swamy, part of South Chennai gets the same water. They have some excess capacity, and part of South Chennai gets that water. Please go ahead, sir.
Yeah. That's right. And in Jamnagar, this Mukesh Ambani has a petrochemical factory, and the local municipality said, we can't give you so much water. We don't have. So they desalinated the water, and today they are giving it to the excess to the municipality of Jamnagar. It can be done. I mean, it's not. The Israelis discovered this 35 years ago. The Arabs are using it. You go to Dubai or UAE, Abu Dhabi, you see all greenery. How this land of sand has become also green. Desalinated water. It's much purer than river water, cleansed. So I would say that use of technology. That means research and development, promote them. Universities, promote them. Scholarships, generous. What is scholarship? You say, okay, you don't have to fill in, give your fees to the college. That's scholarship. You don't have to hand over somebody a cash check and say, now go and pay your fees. No. You say, don't pay. And the college then gives you a bill, the government a bill. Give them print notes and give it to them.
There's a last question, please.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, sir. Last question, please. Debanjan Banerjee wants to know, what's the long-term strategic objective of China in the South Asian region?
They want to see you as a colony. They want to subdue you so that there's no challenge to them as the Asian power. They've done it already with Russia. They made Putin into a junior partner. Because the economy, he couldn't manage the economy. They had looted it so much after Putin took office. All these gas entrepreneurs.
Oligarchs.
That's right. And so now they want India. India is a target. And they have already flooded us with exports. Today, we are not able to ban exports because we think our economy will come to a stop. And they are on the other side, they are at war with us. So that's what they want. They're going according to a plan. Modi has no plan. Modi had an appeal. There is a tough guy, but even that is getting dented. I hope it doesn't go against your way of thinking, but this is how I
Not at all, sir. I think you have a fair point there. India has much catching up to do. Dr. Swamy, that was a tremendously interesting conversation, or I should say lecture. I was just giving in a few questions here and there. Contrary to what we both thought, it was very well attended to, very good questions. Viewers, at this point, we'll have to stop because Dr. Swamy is busy and he's getting a lot of calls, as you can hear from the conversation. So, Dr. Swamy, looking forward to seeing you again 2 weeks from now on another apolitical topic. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Bye. Namaskar.